It was a quiet evening in Streamwood, Illinois, when a knock at the door shattered the peace. Detective Garcia and Detective Wagner, from the Romo Police Department, stood on the porch of Ermelinda Palomo's home. They weren't here for a casual conversation, they were here to uncover the truth behind a brutal murder. "Hello, Ermelinda," Detective Garcia began, his tone serious yet measured. "We need to talk." What followed was a chilling series of revelations that would unravel a web of deceit, betrayal, and violence, dragging Ermelinda into the spotlight of a murder investigation. Her fiancé, Nathaniel Huey Jr., was at the center of it all. "Does your fiancé live here with you?" Detective Wagner asked, stepping carefully into the conversation. "Yes," Ermelinda replied hesitantly. "We've been together since 2015. The detectives exchanged a glance. This was no routine visit, they had damning evidence in their possession, a series of incriminating text messages. These messages, retrieved from phone data, painted a picture of someone seething with rage at the murder victim. And now, they needed to know, did any of this trace back to Ermelinda? "We've recovered messages from a texting app," Garcia explained. "Messages that show someone was very upset with the victim. Is there any chance these texts could be linked to you, your phone, or your name?" Ermelinda's eyes darted nervously. "No," she said firmly, but the tension in her voice betrayed her growing unease. Detectives sensed the tension between Ermelinda and her fiancé, Nathaniel. They asked if she'd feel more comfortable talking away from him. Reluctantly, she agreed. But it wasn't without hesitation. "Do you want to step outside, maybe go somewhere more private?" Garcia suggested. "We can talk by my car or even at the park." Ermelinda nodded, but her anxiety was palpable. "If he comes outside, he'll probably tell me to go back in," she admitted. If you've been captivated by this tragic and twisted tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. Hit the like button if you found this story compelling, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the most gripping cases. Stay tuned for more stories that uncover the dark truths behind shocking events. The detectives reassured her, emphasizing that they wanted her to feel safe. Eventually, they convinced her to leave the house with them. As they drove to a nearby park, Ermelinda's facade began to crumble. Tears welled in her eyes, and she fought to hold them back. "It's okay to cry," Wagner said softly. "This is a lot to process." But what exactly was Ermelinda processing? As the pieces of the puzzle began to emerge, the investigators discovered a chilling narrative that would implicate Nathaniel and unearth a series of events no one could have predicted. What Ermelinda didn't know, or perhaps refused to admit, was that Nathaniel Huey Jr. was entangled in a web of lies and vengeance. The texts retrieved from the victim's phone were only the tip of the iceberg. Behind closed doors, a plot had been brewing, one fueled by betrayal, jealousy, and an unstoppable thirst for control. As Ermelinda sat in the passenger seat of the police car, her nerves were raw. She was about to be caught in the crossfire of an investigation that would unravel not just the truth about her fiancé but also the dark secrets that led to the massacre of an innocent family. What happened next would shock even the most seasoned detectives. Stay tuned as we reveal the dark truth behind this tragic case of catfishing, jealousy, and murder. This chilling story reminds us that betrayal, when combined with desperation, can lead to unthinkable acts. The question remains, how far would someone go to exact revenge? The story takes an even darker turn on September 17, 2023, when Romeoville police were called to perform a welfare check on a family who had not been heard from in days. What began as a routine call soon spiraled into a grim and harrowing scene. The officers arrived at the home on Camden Drive just before nightfall. The quiet suburban street betrayed no signs of trouble, but something about the house felt off. The blinds were drawn, the yard was eerily still, and no one responded to the officers' repeated knocks. "Let's check the back," one officer suggested, their flashlight cutting through the dark. They peered through the windows, trying to catch a glimpse inside. The first indication that something was wrong came when they noticed the living room in disarray, a TV knocked over, a coffee table overturned. It looked like there had been a struggle. "Can we get another unit to Camden, please?" an officer radioed in. The tension was mounting. They circled the house, looking for any signs of life. A light was faintly visible in one of the back rooms, but the rest of the house was dark. Then, the officers caught sight of something chilling, 2 lifeless dogs lying near the back door. 2 dead dogs inside, the officer confirmed into his radio. "This is not looking good." With no response from inside the house, the decision was made to force entry. The officers strategized carefully, their training kicking in. One grabbed a rifle for lethal cover, while another prepared to breach the back door. "We'll go in through the back," the officer leading the team announced. "Hold the front, just in case." The air was heavy with anticipation as the officers moved into position. Every shadow and sound carried a sense of foreboding. They knew they weren't just walking into a house, they were stepping into the unknown. Inside, the silence was deafening, broken only by the officers' cautious movements. Room by room, they cleared the house, flashlights darting across walls and floors. What they found would haunt them forever. In the living room, the overturned furniture was only the beginning. Deeper into the house, they uncovered a scene of unimaginable horror. A family, parents and their 2 children, had been brutally massacred. The once vibrant home was now a silent witness to unspeakable violence. "Get fire staged," one officer called over the radio, his voice tight with emotion. "We have fatalities here. All units, secure the scene." The investigation quickly shifted into high gear. Detectives were called in, forensic teams began documenting the scene, and the neighborhood was locked down. As the details of the massacre emerged, so did a chilling connection. Ermelinda Palomo's fiancé, Nathaniel Huey Jr. was now a prime suspect. What had started as an ordinary welfare check had unraveled into a nightmare. The family's tragic end was only the beginning of a twisted tale involving catfishing, infidelity, and revenge. This case raises chilling questions. What drove someone to such horrific violence? And how far does the deception go? As investigators piece together the evidence, one thing becomes clear: this wasn't a random act. It was personal. Stay tuned for the next part in this shocking case, where we dive into the sinister motives and devastating fallout of a deadly catfishing plot. How does a relationship built on lies spiral into murder? The answers will leave you speechless. The officers moved cautiously through the house, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Every step heightened the sense of dread. Behind the first door, the lifeless bodies of the family's 2 dogs confirmed their worst fears: something terrible had happened here. "Check the next door," one officer instructed, his voice steady but tense. Room by room, they cleared the house, until they reached the chilling heart of the crime scene. In one room, they found Zara Balam, her husband Alberto, and their 2 young sons. All were deceased, the victims of what initially appeared to be a violent robbery. The scene was chaotic, furniture overturned, objects scattered, but something didn't quite add up. As investigators examined the victims' phones, the pieces of the puzzle began to shift. What had looked like a robbery gone wrong revealed a far more sinister motive. The investigation quickly pointed detectives toward Ermelinda Palomo, who was already being questioned about her fiancé, Nathaniel Huey Jr. The motive for the gruesome murders came into focus when it was revealed that Nathaniel had been having an affair with Zara Balam. When detectives pressed Ermelinda about the affair, she claimed to have only discovered it on the same day as the murders. But the evidence told a different story. Phone records showed that Ermelinda had known about the affair for some time, and jealousy had been brewing beneath the surface. "How long have you known about his affairs?" one detective asked. Ermelinda hesitated. "I mean, I've suspected since we started dating in 2015. But I thought it was over. He told me he wasn't cheating anymore after his son was born." "Did you believe him?" the detective pressed. "I wanted to," she admitted, her voice cracking. But I can't trust him. I guess I never could. Over the years, Ermelinda had endured Nathaniel's infidelity, even hearing whispers about his relationships with other women. She tried to rationalize her feelings, saying, "I don't blame the women, it's his fault." But it hurts. Of course, it hurts. Ermelinda explained that Nathaniel worked security at clubs, often putting him in environments where temptation was constant. He had assured her that while women flirted with him, he never acted on it. However, the truth was far more complicated, and deadly. If you've been captivated by this tragic and twisted tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. Hit the like button if you found this story compelling, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the most gripping cases. Stay tuned for more stories that uncover the dark truths behind shocking events. As detectives pieced together the timeline, they uncovered a volatile mix of jealousy, betrayal, and unchecked rage. Ermelinda confessed to moments of anger but denied ever confronting Nathaniel's lovers. "What's the point?" she said. "I'm too old for that. It's not their fault, it's his." But was Ermelinda truly uninvolved? Or had her emotions pushed Nathaniel over the edge? Reports indicated that Nathaniel's affair with Zara had ignited a dangerous jealousy in Ermelinda. And while she insisted she had no prior knowledge of the murders, the investigators weren't convinced. The detectives shifted their focus to Nathaniel's past and uncovered troubling details. Ermelinda described him as a man with a passion for airsoft games, often traveling to Milwaukee and Bristol for tournaments. While she adamantly claimed he didn't own real firearms, she admitted they had visited shooting ranges together, raising questions about his access to weapons. "Does he have a FOID card?" a detective asked. "No," Ermelinda replied. "But I do. I own guns for protection." Her statements raised more questions than answers. Was Nathaniel truly unarmed, or was this another layer of deception? Investigators suspected there was more to the story, especially given the calculated nature of the murders. Nathaniel's relationship with Zara had taken a dark turn, one that no one could have foreseen. What began as an illicit affair escalated into an unimaginable act of violence. The jealousy and betrayal swirling around Ermelinda and Nathaniel formed the backdrop to a tragedy that shattered an innocent family. But was this a crime of passion, or something far more calculated? As detectives pressed Ermelinda for answers, the lines between victim and accomplice blurred. What drove Nathaniel to such horrific violence? Did Ermelinda's jealousy fuel his actions, or was she merely a bystander to his destructive behavior? And how deep did the lies and deceit truly go? As the investigation unfolds, the truth behind the murders will come to light, exposing the devastating consequences of betrayal, obsession, and unchecked rage. Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking conclusion to this chilling case, a tale of love, betrayal, and murder that left an entire community reeling. Just when the investigation couldn't seem more convoluted, a jaw-dropping twist emerged. Ermelinda Palomo, in an attempt to manipulate her fiancé, Nathaniel Huey Jr. had allegedly created a complex web of deceit. Posing as a cartel leader through fake online personas, Ermelinda convinced Nathaniel that Zara Ballum, the woman he was having an affair with, posed a life-threatening danger to him. She fabricated messages, staged conspiracies, and spun a narrative that Zara was working with dangerous criminals, supposedly planning harm against Nathaniel. Ermelinda's manipulation painted Zara as an imminent threat, setting the stage for Nathaniel to act out of fear and perceived self-defense. This twisted catfishing plot didn't just escalate emotions, it drove a catastrophic series of events that ended in bloodshed. On September 18, 2023, just one day after the horrific discovery of Zara and her family's bodies, Romeoville police tracked Nathaniel down at his workplace. Their goal, to question him about the murders and uncover the truth about his connection to Zara and her family. The conversation between detectives and Nathaniel quickly turned to his phone. They knew that text messages and other digital communications could provide a critical link in the case. Detectives approached Nathaniel with a seemingly simple request: hand over his phone so they could recover the messages exchanged between him and Zara. "We've already retrieved part of the conversation from the victim's phone," one detective explained. "Now we need your consent to access the messages from your side, Snapchat, text, whatever app you've used." Nathaniel appeared hesitant, nervously deflecting their request. "I don't even have anything on my phone," he claimed. "Everything's already deleted." The detectives weren't convinced. "When you delete something, it's never really gone," one of them explained. "We can still retrieve it from the cache." Despite their explanations, Nathaniel's unease grew. "It feels like you're suspecting me," he said, attempting to shift the focus. "I didn't do anything." The detective remained calm but firm. "Anytime someone dies, we start by looking at the people closest to them, husbands, boyfriends, lovers. It's just how the process works. We need to eliminate you as a suspect, and the fastest way to do that is by pulling the data from your phone." Nathaniel's reluctance only deepened the detective's suspicion. His evasive answers and nervous demeanor were raising more questions than they were resolving. Why was he so unwilling to cooperate if he truly had nothing to hide? The detectives knew that accessing Nathaniel's phone data could reveal the missing pieces of the story. They explained that obtaining a search warrant was an option but emphasized that his cooperation would speed up the process. "Look, this is about eliminating you as a suspect," the detective reiterated. "We have a deceased woman, and you were her last known fling. If you were in our position, who would you look at first?" Nathaniel remained defensive, claiming he had nothing to hide, but his refusal to voluntarily provide access to his phone only added to the mounting suspicion against him. As the interrogation unfolded, the detectives began piecing together a chilling narrative. Ermelinda's catfishing scheme had created a volatile mix of fear, jealousy, and manipulation. Nathaniel, driven by the belief that Zara was conspiring against him, may have acted out of paranoia, a paranoia carefully planted and cultivated by Ermelinda. The investigation was now at a critical juncture. The digital evidence on Nathaniel's phone could confirm whether Ermelinda's deception directly fueled the violence or if there were deeper, darker motives at play. The case of Zara Balam and her family's tragic deaths was no longer just about infidelity or a crime of passion, it had become a labyrinth of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. The question now was, who was truly responsible? Was Nathaniel manipulated into committing the murders, or was he complicit in the act from the start? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this shocking case, uncovering the final pieces of the puzzle and revealing the devastating consequences of jealousy, deceit, and obsession. As the detectives pressed Nathaniel Huey Jr. to hand over his phone, his resistance only added fuel to their suspicions. Despite their reassurances, Nathaniel's reluctance to provide access created a standoff. "I get it," Nathaniel insisted, his voice edged with frustration. "But taking my phone? You already have her side of it. Why do you need mine?" The detectives tried to explain the importance of obtaining both sides of the conversation. "We need to verify there were no threats, no animosity, and no indications of conflict. We can't just take your word for it. Without seeing your side, we can't definitively eliminate you as a suspect." Nathaniel suggested an alternative. "How about I come by later, after work? You can do whatever you need to do with it then." The detectives knew this wasn't ideal. Time was critical, and any delay could allow Nathaniel to erase incriminating evidence. "The problem," one detective explained, "is that if we wait and something gets deleted, it's going to look like you're hiding something." Nathaniel brushed off the comment. "I don't have anything to hide," he said. But his hesitation told a different story. The connection between Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Zara Balam had come to light during the investigation. Their affair had begun at work, where the two had bonded over shared secrets and mutual attraction. To keep their relationship hidden, they met discreetly in hotel rooms, ensuring that no one, especially Nathaniel's fiancée, Ermelinda Palomo, would find out. But while Nathaniel and Zara were building their secret life, a darker narrative was taking shape. Ermelinda, fueled by jealousy and fear of losing Nathaniel, began her catfishing scheme, creating fake personas and fabricating threats that escalated the situation to a deadly breaking point. As detectives dug deeper into Nathaniel's background, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. His criminal history wasn't just a footnote, it was a defining part of his life. Using online databases like TruthFinder, investigators uncovered a series of past offenses that painted Nathaniel as someone who was no stranger to trouble. From petty crimes to more serious charges, Nathaniel's record showed a man who often found himself on the wrong side of the law. His ability to navigate and manipulate situations had likely played a role in both his relationship with Zara and the way he handled questioning by the police. If you've been captivated by this tragic and twisted tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. Hit the like button if you found this story compelling, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the most gripping cases. Stay tuned for more stories that uncover the dark truths behind shocking events. With Ermelinda's catfishing plot and Nathaniel's criminal history in focus, the detectives began to connect the dots. The affair between Nathaniel and Zara had sparked Ermelinda's jealousy, which she used to craft a narrative of danger and betrayal. By convincing Nathaniel that Zara was plotting against him, Ermelinda had set the stage for a tragedy. But how much of the story was Nathaniel's to own? Was he manipulated into committing the murders, or was he an active participant? The answers lay in the digital evidence, texts, Snapchats, and calls that could either exonerate or condemn him. The detectives faced a race against time. Nathaniel's reluctance to hand over his phone raised the possibility that evidence was being erased as they spoke. Every moment of delay put them further from the truth and closer to the possibility of key information being lost forever. As the investigation pressed forward, one thing became clear: the tangled relationships, manipulations, and betrayals surrounding this case had created a perfect storm of tragedy. Ermelinda's jealousy, Nathaniel's secrets, and Zara's untimely death were all pieces of a puzzle that needed to be solved before the case grew colder. What happens when love turns into obsession, and lies lead to murder? Stay tuned as we uncover more details about this shocking case and the deadly consequences of deception. When Ermelinda Palomo discovered Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s affair with Zoraida Ballum, she wasn't content with simply confronting him. Fueled by jealousy and a need for control, she devised a calculated scheme to ensure he'd never stray again. Her plan wasn't just about ending the affair, it was about completely manipulating Nathaniel's mind to turn him into a pawn in her dangerous game. Police documents revealed the disturbing extent of Ermelinda's manipulations. Using fake online identities, she fabricated messages and scenarios that painted Zoraida and her family as a deadly threat to Nathaniel. She made him believe that Zoraida was conspiring with dangerous criminals to harm him and destroy his life. Through the Pinger messaging app, Ermelinda crafted a false narrative so convincing that Nathaniel fell for it completely. She used fear as her weapon, creating a psychological grip over him that would ultimately drive him to commit unspeakable acts. In messages exchanged through Pinger, Ermelinda instructed Nathaniel on how to carry out the murders. She emphasized the need to make the crime scene look like a botched burglary. "Cause some damage," one message read, "make it look like kids broke in." To calm his nerves, she reassured him, "Many murders go unsolved." Her calculated words set the stage for the massacre. On September 16, 2023, at approximately 3:17 a.m., Ermelinda drove Nathaniel to Zoraida's home in Romeoville, Illinois. Surveillance footage later obtained by investigators showed Nathaniel methodically preparing to commit the crime. He cut through window screens to simulate a break-in before entering the home through an unlocked door. Inside, the Ballum family was asleep, unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. Zoraida's husband, Roland, was the first to confront Nathaniel. In a desperate attempt to protect his family, Roland fought back but was fatally shot multiple times. Nathaniel then turned his attention to the bedroom, where Zoraida and her 2 children were hiding. Without hesitation, he fired through the door, killing all 3 in cold blood. Not even the family's dogs were spared. The scene was one of unimaginable devastation, a family and their pets slaughtered in a matter of minutes. After the massacre, Nathaniel left the crime scene and returned to his normal routine. The next day, he showed no outward signs of guilt or remorse. He went to work as if nothing had happened, interacting with colleagues and carrying on with his life. This calm facade was shattered when police arrived to question him. Detectives, armed with mounting evidence, sought to piece together Nathaniel's role in the murders and the extent of Ermelinda's manipulations. When detectives first approached Nathaniel, he maintained a calm and cooperative demeanor, even as the weight of the situation became clear. "I understand why you want to keep this on the down low," one detective said, acknowledging the personal nature of the affair. But the investigators were persistent, knowing they were speaking to someone deeply entangled in the case. Nathaniel attempted to deflect, downplaying his involvement and claiming ignorance of the deeper motives. Yet, his resistance to handing over his phone and the increasingly suspicious timeline worked against him. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Ermelinda's jealousy and need for control were the driving forces behind the murders. She had manipulated Nathaniel into believing Zoraida was a threat, using fear and lies to push him toward violence. Nathaniel, already troubled by a criminal past, was vulnerable to her influence. His willingness to carry out the murders revealed a chilling susceptibility to Ermelinda's manipulations, but it also raised questions about his own moral culpability. Did he act solely under Ermelinda's influence, or was he a willing participant in the violence? The murders of Zoraida Balam and her family shocked the community and left investigators piecing together a case unlike any they had seen before. Ermelinda's web of deceit, Nathaniel's violent actions, and the tragic deaths of an innocent family highlighted the devastating consequences of jealousy and manipulation. As the case heads to court, the chilling details of this crime continue to unfold, leaving one haunting question: how far will someone go when blinded by jealousy and fear? Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the case, revealing the psychological tactics Ermelinda used, Nathaniel's criminal history, and the evidence that ultimately brought their horrific actions to light. As the interrogation of Nathaniel Huey Jr. deepened, the detectives carefully navigated the complexities of the case. Their questions aimed to uncover the truth about his involvement in the murders, his relationship with Zoraida Balam, and the manipulative influence of Ermelinda Palomo. But Nathaniel's responses, filled with hesitation and half-truths, only added to the growing suspicion around him. Ermelinda Palomo, desperate to protect Nathaniel, provided investigators with a false alibi for him, further complicating the case. Her web of lies extended far beyond her catfishing scheme, creating layers of deception that made it difficult for detectives to separate fact from fiction. Ermelinda's role wasn't just limited to manipulating Nathaniel into believing Zoraida was a threat. She also worked to create doubt about Nathaniel's involvement in the crime, casting shadows over the investigation. But the inconsistencies in her story were beginning to show. Back in the interrogation room, detectives pushed Nathaniel to confront his connection to Zoraida and the events leading up to the murders. "Have you ever had contact with her husband?" one detective asked. Nathaniel shook his head. "No, never. He's never called me, never messaged me." The detective pressed further. "We're going to find your messages. Texts, Snapchats, whatever's on your phone. If there was any fighting, any threats, we're going to uncover it. Now's the time to tell us before we find it on our own." Nathaniel doubled down. "There wasn't anything like that. No threats. No fighting. Nothing." But the detectives weren't convinced. They knew Nathaniel's reluctance to hand over his phone and Ermelinda's false alibi were major red flags. Every detail they uncovered seemed to add another layer to the story, making it increasingly clear that the truth was far darker than anyone had initially imagined. Ermelinda's fabrications didn't stop with her alibi for Nathaniel. When asked about Zoraida's name, she provided a convoluted and unconvincing explanation. "I thought her name was something else, Bartholomew, maybe. It was a long name," she stammered. The detectives knew they were being fed misinformation but pressed on. "If he didn't know her, why would he lie about it?" they asked, referring to Nathaniel's denial of ever hearing Zoraida's name. "I don't know," Ermelinda replied, her voice faltering. "Please don't tell him I said anything." "We're not here to put him on trial for having an affair," one detective said firmly. "This is about the murder of a family. The affair is the least of our worries." Despite her protests, Ermelinda's involvement was becoming impossible to ignore. Her attempts to shield Nathaniel only deepened the detectives' belief that she was far more involved in the crime than she wanted them to think. With Nathaniel's evasive answers and Ermelinda's false narratives, the detectives began to see the broader picture. The affair, the fabricated threats, the false alibis, it all pointed to a premeditated plan orchestrated by Ermelinda and executed by Nathaniel. Ermelinda's manipulations weren't just emotional, they were strategic, designed to push Nathaniel into a corner where he believed violence was his only way out. But while Nathaniel might have been influenced by Ermelinda's schemes, his actions were deliberate. The cold-blooded murder of Zoraida Balaam, her husband, and their children showed a level of brutality that couldn't be ignored. The investigation into the murders of Zoraida and her family was far from over. Detectives were determined to uncover every detail of the crime and hold those responsible accountable. The question remained, how much of the violence was Nathaniel's doing, and how much was Ermelinda's influence? Stay tuned as we delve into the psychological manipulation, digital evidence, and chilling details that brought this horrific case to light. The shocking conclusion will leave you questioning the boundaries of loyalty, love, and control. As detectives continued to piece together the events of the weekend leading up to the murders, Ermelinda Palomo provided a timeline of her and Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s activities. Her account, riddled with odd details and inconsistencies, painted a picture of a chaotic yet seemingly mundane weekend. But for investigators, every word was a potential key to uncovering the truth, or another layer of deception. Detectives asked Ermelinda to account for Nathaniel's whereabouts on Friday and Saturday night. Her response was detailed, almost too detailed, as if she was trying to fill in gaps she knew might exist. "Friday night, we started drinking," she said. "We were at home, drinking a lot. Probably fell asleep. He sleeps in the garage, and I sleep in my room." This revelation raised a red flag for investigators. "Why does he sleep in the garage?" one detective asked. "He says he's more comfortable there," Ermelinda explained. "There's a couch. It's not finished or anything, but he likes it." The following day, Ermelinda claimed they were both hungover. She recounted an unremarkable day, marked by a trip to Ross to shop for jeans and a meal at Jersey Mike's. According to her, Nathaniel spent the afternoon playing Grand Theft Auto with the kids while she napped. "I woke up and yelled at everybody," Ermelinda admitted, laughing nervously. "Apparently, I was yelling in my sleep." Her daughter later mentioned hearing Nathaniel snoring loudly, which Ermelinda used as further proof that he had been at home all night. But investigators weren't convinced. The overly specific details, paired with her defensive tone, suggested she was trying to cement an alibi for Nathaniel. Ermelinda's timeline continued into Sunday morning, the day after the murders. She described waking up around 9 a.m. and having a mundane conversation with Nathaniel about laundry, returning shoes, and grocery shopping. "I told him I didn't have enough money for everything," she said. "He said he'd help." Her account of the morning painted a picture of normalcy, too much normalcy for someone potentially involved in a heinous crime. Investigators began to suspect that her story was carefully crafted to distance Nathaniel from the scene of the murders. For detectives, Ermelinda's story raised more questions than it answered. The weekend she described was filled with minor details but lacked critical information about Nathaniel's movements during the hours when the murders occurred. Her attempt to establish an alibi, combined with her earlier manipulations and false narratives, further implicated her in the crime. They were also struck by her focus on defending Nathaniel while deflecting attention away from the murders themselves. "I know I'm talking a lot about cheating," Ermelinda admitted at one point, "but that's not why we're here." Detectives noted that while she claimed to be forthcoming, her answers often felt rehearsed, and her insistence on providing unnecessary details only deepened their suspicions. The more Ermelinda spoke, the more inconsistencies emerged. Her timeline didn't account for key moments, such as when Nathaniel might have left the house or when he could have returned after the crime. Investigators knew they needed more evidence to confirm or refute her statements. Meanwhile, Nathaniel's own behavior, his reluctance to cooperate and his evasive answers, added another layer of complexity. The detectives had a growing sense that the couple was working together to hide the truth, even if their stories didn't entirely align. The investigation into the murders of Zoraida Balam and her family was far from over. Detectives were determined to unravel the layers of deception and get to the bottom of what happened during that fateful weekend. With conflicting alibis, suspicious behavior, and mounting evidence, the case was heading toward a chilling conclusion. Stay tuned as we uncover more about Nathaniel and Ermelinda's role in this horrific crime, the inconsistencies in their stories, and the digital evidence that could bring the entire truth to light. As investigators delved deeper into the case, Ermelinda Palomo's attempts to cover for Nathaniel Huey Jr. unraveled under scrutiny. Her inconsistent timeline, over-explained details, and efforts to cement his alibi raised red flags at every turn. Detectives knew the truth was far more sinister than what Ermelinda was willing to admit. But before authorities could fully piece together the damning evidence, the couple fled Illinois, setting off a nationwide manhunt. What followed was a chain of events that ended in one of the most harrowing conclusions in modern crime history. Initially, Ermelinda was reported missing by her family, leading authorities to believe she might have been abducted by Nathaniel. However, it soon became apparent that she was not a victim but an accomplice. Surveillance footage captured the couple together, appearing calm and even smiling at a Walmart in Catoosa, Oklahoma, nearly 9 hours south of where the murders occurred. By the time police closed in, the couple had already planned their escape. But this would not end quietly. Police tracked Nathaniel's black SUV, preparing to bring the couple into custody. When officers approached, Nathaniel sped off, leading to a high-speed chase through the rural roads of Oklahoma. The pursuit ended abruptly when the SUV crashed and caught fire. Smoke and flames engulfed the vehicle as officers moved in, weapons drawn. "Get out of the car!" "Now," officers shouted, their commands echoing over the chaos. But the couple did not emerge. Inside the vehicle, Nathaniel made his final, horrific decision. As the flames grew, he turned a gun on Ermelinda, shooting her in the head. He then attempted to shoot himself under the chin, but the first shot failed. With grim determination, he fired again, this time fatally. Officers moved in cautiously, extinguishing the fire and securing the vehicle. The scene inside was devastating. Both Ermelinda and Nathaniel were lifeless, their desperate escape having ended in tragedy. As investigators sifted through the wreckage, the full extent of Ermelinda's manipulation came to light. Text messages, fabricated threats, and orchestrated alibis painted a chilling picture of her psychological control over Nathaniel. Her jealousy and deceit had spiraled into violence, leaving 4 innocent people dead and a community in shock. Romeoville Police Chief Brand Romadka issued a statement addressing the gravity of the case. "Nothing can prepare a person for such an incident, and nothing can justify such a senseless act of violence." Zoraida Balam, her husband Alberto Roland, and their 2 children were remembered as a loving family whose lives were cruelly cut short. For their surviving family members, the pain of their loss remains immeasurable. The Ermelinda Palomo case serves as a harrowing example of how unchecked jealousy and emotional manipulation can spiral into catastrophic consequences. Her actions, combined with Nathaniel's blind trust in her fabricated narrative, led to the loss of 6 lives, including their own. This case underscores the importance of recognizing and addressing toxic behaviors in relationships before they escalate into violence. It is a stark reminder that emotional manipulation, if left unchecked, can have devastating effects, not only on those involved but also on innocent lives caught in the crossfire. If you've been captivated by this tragic and twisted tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. Hit the like button if you found this story compelling, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the most gripping cases. Stay tuned for more stories that uncover the dark truths behind shocking events. The Balam family, Zoraida, Alberto, and their children, live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved them. While justice may have come too late, their memories serve as a beacon of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss. This case stands as a solemn warning. Jealousy and deceit may seem small at first, but their consequences can grow into something unimaginable. The lessons from this tragedy must not be forgotten.